Hey everybody. So if you've been following my videos, you know that I have this AHA Carbon GTS style splitter for the M2, which I've actually been very happy with. But recently I saw something which I impulsively, but not regrettably, just had to get. And that is the Diverged Concepts GT/GTS style splitter and its adjustability. Now the Diverged Concepts splitter does come in two separate pieces. You can see we have the upper splitter here and the lower, and these are sold separately. So if you wanted to only run this upper portion, you could, and you know, it'd be a bit cheaper that way. And quite frankly, this thing looks fantastic on its own. But I really was interested about this adjustable lower piece as well, so I just had to get it. And as I understand it, Diverged Concepts is coming out with a couple different versions of both of these, right? I have the original you know, gloss carbon fiber, but apparently they're going to be making, you know, like FRP versions of both if you wanted to, you know, get a cheaper alternative and also, you know, have something a little bit better to paint. Now, one of the things you will notice about this upper splitter right now, and also the lower one, is, well, there's a couple extra holes drilled in here that this doesn't actually come with. So I actually added these for my own riv nut mounting system that I have on my bumper, so that this could just mate right up to the existing system. But what this does come with, it does come with all these holes in the rear for the 8mm bolts that you know, normally hold the underbody paneling to the car. And then for the front section of it, Diverged Concepts includes some 3M double-sided tape. You know, it's a inch wide one, so pretty substantial. And typically it'll come pre-applied along the front edges here. As for me, I'm not going to be using any of this because, you know, as you know, I like to have all my stuff just secured with fasteners so that I can just put this on, you know, bolt it up, bolt it off whenever I want, nice and easy, no residue from cleaning up any double-sided adhesives. One of the really interesting design choices that Diverged Concepts has made is, if you look at the bottom of the splitter here, this isn't carbon fiber. This is a piece of aluma board, or as you can see from the branding on the protective sheeting on the lower splitter, it's I-board. And what this is it's two layers of very thin aluminum that are sandwiching a high poly, you know, density or high density polyethylene type inner core plastic. So this material is typically used in like the signage industry, but you know, if you look at like club racers, you know, who have made their own custom splitters, this is a very common material for that because it's strong and lightweight. So this is a really interesting design choice, and I actually kind of like this because, you know, this type of material is pretty robust. If you scrape it on the bottom, no worries. Not like carbon fiber where you have to worry about wearing it down a lot on the pavement. So you probably don't need as much you know, bottom protection like slip low if you're running something like this. And then you can see along the edges, it's just bonded to the carbon fiber upper. Now, the Diverged Concepts lower splitter has one feature that I thought was pretty cool, and honestly, I haven't seen anywhere else. And if we look closely, you can see along the leading edge, there's this rubber bumper. So if you're going to, you know, accidentally hit anything or just, you know, normal road debris, this is going to take that impact instead of, you know, going and immediately chipping any clear coat over the carbon fiber. So this is a really nice, cool little feature that I wish, you know, more splitters had. But you know, props to Diverged Concepts for being innovative here. The lower splitter, and you know, I'll go ahead and start peeling off some of this protective sheeting. Yeah, you know, we can see that it's just the aluma board, and you know, we saw it had a carbon fiber top, so that means this is mostly aluma board with just a thin layer of carbon fiber on top. So you know, whether or not, you know, that changes the value equation for you or anything, then, you know, probably good to know, but quite frankly, it doesn't matter too much. And actually, like I said before, having this aluma board material on the bottom is probably better if you're going to be scraping this against anything. And in case you're wondering what these pieces weigh, the Diverged Concepts upper splitter weighs right in at 4 pounds, and the lower splitter is a little bit under 3.5. So Diverged Concepts has two base styles of splitter, the GT and the GTS. And if you're wondering what is the difference, well, this AHA Carbon splitter I have on the car right now, this is a GTS style splitter. And a GTS style splitter does just that. It follows the original design of the M4 GTS from BMW. And the main difference is in this brake cooling channel right here. If you look at an M4 GTS, it has this channel so the air can go here through the bumper and follow the built-in channel on the underbody shielding to go to the wheel well. So why would I give up this channel for a GT style, which instead of having this brake duct cooling channel here, just follows the lines of the bumper up here and fills it in with carbon? Well, if we take a look at that brake cooling duct channel, you see that there's just a piece of plastic back here, right? So on the M2, you have this lower wind deflector piece here that blocks any airflow going in, and it just routes it off to the side of the car. So this is really not functional at all. So having this brake cooling duct here really doesn't do anything for us. So let's talk about how the Diverged Concepts splitter mounts. Well, as it comes from Diverged Concepts, you have all these mounting holes in the rear here, and those are for the small, 8mm with washer screws that just secure the underbody paneling and liners. And then Diverged Concepts also includes a bunch of 3M double-sided tape, which you're supposed to, or they will pre-apply for you along the edge or the periphery around here. Now, since I already had the very secure riv nuts and backing plate that I put in my bumper from my last splitter, I wanted to adapt this splitter for that mounting system because, well, it's very strong and holds quite well. I could stand on this. I can loaded it up with 200 pounds and no problem. So what did I do? Well, you can see here I laid down some masking tape to protect the finish of the splitter, as well as give me a surface to mark up. And then what I did is I used these rear mounting holes, mounted it up with the 8mm screws to the bumper, and then I pressed the front of it up against my riv nuts with the little bolts in there. And what that did is that left little indentations in the masking tape, which then I placed the dot where the center is and circled and marked it. So what this is going to show me is this is going to show me where I need to drill such that the holes on this are going to line up with the riv nuts that I've installed in my bumper. So just like my last splitter, this will allow me to do this entire installation with just, screws and bolts, no double-sided tape, so it's very easy to take this thing off when I don't want it, and also very easy to reinstall it when I want it. So in addition to those holes on top, I also had to make some holes on the bottom, so that we could actually pass the bolts and washers that we're using to mount this through. So that was easy, just mark it off and then go ahead and take your little hole saw bit and go ahead and drill those. One thing I did have to be a little careful of, and the reason why this hole is smaller than the others, is if you look inside the splitter, you can see that there's this adhesive mound surrounding the riv nut that Diverged Concepts use to fasten the lower adjustable splitter to. And so this was really close to that blob of adhesive holding that there. So I wanted to drill through as little of that as possible to make sure that this mount holds up. So that's why I used a smaller one here. But this is so close to the edge that I can actually pass the bolt in through this big gap here from behind, and then therefore this only needs to be big enough to fit my socket. Now, since this is that aluminum backed, I-board material, the edges of the metal layer here curled upwards, and I don't want that sharp edge because, well, I'm going to be putting the lower splitter against this, and so that's going to scrape against here. So I took my, file and I filed down all these edges so that they're nice and flush, and there's nothing that's going to scrape that lower splitter. All right, let's get to the unique part of the Diverged Concepts splitter, and that is this lower splitter piece, right? So this is going to attach to the upper part like so, and be able to adjust outwards and inwards to change the amount of front downforce you're creating. And the way it does that, if we go ahead and flip this upper splitter piece over, is there are these various screw holes here, and obviously you can see the corresponding slots in the lower splitter piece, and then Diverged Concepts gives you these bolts with washers, so you can see that the system is pretty simple. in that you just put the lower splitter on and line things up, and then go ahead and take your bolt and your washer and go ahead and screw these two pieces together, and that'll allow you to adjust it like so. Now, one of the things about this though is if you look at where the mounting holes are, there's only like one row of them going across the bottom of the upper splitter piece. And what Diverged Concepts intends for you to do is actually, once again, use more 3M double-sided tape and put some along this leading edge up here so that it can make contact and hold up the front edge of the lower splitter. Now, the reason why I don't prefer that is obviously that doesn't make it very quickly adjustable, right? So sure, you undo the bolts here, but then you have to pry apart the adhesive and then clean that off, adjust it to your new setting, and then apply another set of double-sided tape. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to add a second row of mounting holes and I'm going to do that using riv nuts once again. So what I've done here is I've marked off the slots. So I've put these pieces together, I've traced the slots on these pieces of tape and also where the center of the hole is, so I know where to place that next riv nut. And the one thing that I do have to be careful about, so normally you can just move this piece to where the bolt holes are all the way in the very back of the slots. And what I will have to do is I'll have to drill a corresponding extra hole up here for the forward mounting. But I won't be able to extend this quite as far with my method, because what will happen is when I eventually do put another hole in the front over here, this is going to, if I moved it so that this very back of the slot was aligned with the hole here, then the hole that I drill in the forward section here is actually going to protrude past the lip, and I think that'll be a little bit ugly. I want this that forwardmost hole to be covered by the top splitter so that it just looks seamless. So I'm not going to be able to get the absolute furthest extension. However, it's not going to be very far off. And if you can see these two pieces lined up, right, so I'm going to have the forwardmost bolt hole at the leading edge of where this slot is. You know, I'm giving up like, you know, maybe at most a 1/4 inch of extension versus if I were to completely bottom it out on the slot. So it's really quite negligible. In addition to that, I'm going to be using some more substantial mounting hardware. So I'm still going to use an M6 bolt in the rear, but I'm going to use a hex head bolt instead of a Phillips screwdriver. And I've also bought some larger fender washers for it, so you know this will have more area that it supports. And then in the front, with my new riv nuts, I'm once again using a hex-headed bolt, so it's you know, nice and easy. And I don't have to worry about stripping or anything like that. And then once again, I'm using a very large fender washer to support the lower splitter piece. So, you know, I hope that this is enough to support this piece and hold it very securely to the upper splitter. Now, one of the things I really like about this upper splitter, and I mentioned it before, is the use of this Alumaboard here, right, instead of just carbon fiber, because this is going to be a little bit easier to work with, and the thickness and rigidity of it is going to be, you know, nice to support everything instead of you know, a much thinner carbon fiber. I mean, I guess you could have gone thicker on carbon fiber here, but that would make the part a lot more expensive. All right, so now let's go ahead and drill that hole. Then we can go ahead and install the rib nut. And there we have our nice forward mount for that bolt, which is going to hold the front of the splitter up. Now, I did make one boo-boo when drilling those forward holes for the rib nuts, and that is the ones on the very edge here. Well, they actually don't have enough clearance for the rib nut. The top side, which is on the underside here, of the splitter goes down so close at this point that there's not actually enough clearance for me to put the rib nut all the way through. So, you know, I think I'm just going to use this rear hole for now. You know, I've already got 8 screws holding the lower splitter to the upper. I think holding power wise that's probably going to be enough, and if I absolutely need to later, well, I can always drill a hole a little bit further back closer to here and put that guy there, but I'm gonna see how this works just as is. So here we have the lower splitter put in the fully retracted position, and we have just a hint of the lower front lip sticking out. Then we have the lower lip fully extended, and you can see the other points where we have both of those bolts going through the slots that Diverged Concepts provided, and you can see the hole in front there that I made for the fully retracted position. And then look how much that front lower lip sticks out now. That is super aggressive looking, but man, it looks great. And notice how you can't see any of those forward mounting holes for the 3 additional rib nuts and bolts I added. So, I accomplished my goal there of keeping those holes hidden at full extension and, keeping this thing looking clean. So one thing I think Diverged Concepts could have done a little bit better is controlling the bottom angle of the splitter here. And what I mean by that is if I take my level and I put it flush against the bottom, you can see that the bubble in the level is all the way to the right, indicating that this bottom is actually angled upwards. And for a street splitter, that's actually not such a bad thing, because it means you're going to have a little bit more clearance as you come down off of a driveway or something, so a little bit extra margin for scraping. But if you want a functional splitter, that's not such a great thing because it can create lift. So what we want instead is, instead of this being angled up, we would want something that's angled, more level, or maybe even slightly downward. Now I do think this is going to be a little bit dependent on the tolerances from bumper to bumper, but mine here is at a pretty decent up angle, and fortunately for me, since I am using the lower splitter piece, I do have the opportunity of correcting that by changing the amount of space between this upper splitter and the lower splitter, rather than trying to have to do something between the bumper and the upper splitter, which is just going to look funky. And the way I'm going to correct that angle of the lower splitter is by using these little angled ramped wedges. And these things, they're actually meant for leveling your furniture. So they're pretty cheap. I think I paid like $7 for the entire set, and I've got more than I will need for here. But anyways, you can get these wedges. You can see I've drilled a hole in one so the bolt will stay in there and capture it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some double-sided tape and then stick it to the underside of the upper splitter here, so that I don't have to worry about these things coming out of position, and that way I can also quickly slide the lower splitter in and out as I'm doing the adjustments just like normal. So I've already put the car on the ground, measured where these need to go to give me that ever so slight downward angle I'm looking at. So now I'm going to go ahead and get that double-sided tape and put them all along the 5 bolt paths. And in case you're wondering, well, hey, I've got my car up on the lift right now, maybe it's not sitting even as it would on the ground. I did do all this measurement and stuff on the ground, so I can definitively say that, yes, I know what's going on here in terms of level, and it's not, due to the car being on the lift. Okay, so I've got my little furniture wedge here. You can see it's got the double-sided tape on there. I've already taken off the backer. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take one of my bolts, go ahead and put that through the hole on the wedge, just so that I can make sure that this is very well aligned with the bolt hole, and then I'll go ahead and screw this in just a little, make sure it's aligned, make sure the wedge is facing perfectly straight to the front, and then I can go ahead and push that up into place. Go ahead and take this bolt out, and then give it a firm press to get it seated. All right, now you can see we've got the wedges in place here, and lower splitters bolted back on. And if I put my level up to it, well, you can see this bubble is now ever so slightly biased to the rear. So it's telling me I achieved this kind of slightly downward angle that I want.